I am really sorry for what you're about to watch. Hi, my name is Sydney, welcome back to my channel. So we're going to talk about transgender children, and this video is going to be demonetized as a result. But before we do that, I just wanted to let you guys know that I finally have a forever home, which is why the scenery won't be changing so frequently. 'Cause like, yay for consistency. Now, for the last few weeks in the media, there has been a lot of talk about transgender children.
My name's Jacob and I'm a 9-year-old transgender American.
And all these stories about drag kids, which isn't the same thing, but still weirds me out.
With fantastic wigs, fabulous shoes, and monumental makeup.
Oh, that is stunning.
There's a new craze for boys.
And the recent case of 7-year-old James Younger, whose parents are currently fighting about whether or not they should transition him to a girl. This is 2019, everyone. We're like a 3-year-old child with a paintbrush, a blank wall, and the adults are out of the room. We basically did this to ourselves, and now we have to sit in the blue painted mess that is society and think about what we've done. But unsurprisingly, James Younger's story has attracted a lot of attention. Allegedly, James's mother, who is also a pediatrician, which is terrifying, I know, has been dressing him up as a girl, calling him Luna, and socially transitioning him since the age of 3. The kicker here is that allegedly the reason she did this is because he expressed interest in a McDonald's toy that was for girls. According to news articles on the topic, the mother has also investigated putting her son on puberty blockers and eventually hormones. Unsurprisingly, the father has resisted this and claims that his son 100% identifies as a boy when he's with him, but also wants to wait and see what happens with his son and this whole issue. So yeah, then that eventuated into a custody dispute. And most recently, the judge presiding over this case has recently decided that the parents will make joint medical decisions for their children, which I guess is a little win for common sense, which happens so infrequently that I'm not even gonna complain about it. But disturbingly, this clip has popped up in the last number of days showing James talking about his mother and how she tells him he's a girl.
You're a boy, right?
No, I'm a girl.
Who told you you were a girl?
Mommy.
When did she tell you you were a girl?
'Cause I love girls.
Oh, I see. So mommy told you you were a girl?
Uh-huh.
Does mommy do anything else like with a girl with you?
Mm-hmm.
Like what?
Like kisses.
What does she do?
She do put them on me.
She puts dresses on you? Oh, wow. And what else does she do?
She buys my headbands.
Uh-huh.
And she gets me hair clips.
Oh, hair clips? Okay. Does she do anything with your fingers?
Yeah.
What?
She paints my nails.
I mean, if that isn't creepy, I don't know what is. This is 100% why people should have licenses to have children. That's right, Sandra. No children for you. But as with most things in 2019, this story just gets sadder. A woman named Sarah Scott, who is the mother of James's best friend, was supposed to testify in this case, but ultimately wasn't allowed. In a lengthy post on Facebook, she writes about her observations of James and his family, saying that James is blissfully happy as a boy. She goes on to write that one day, James was playing outside and fell in some mud and ultimately had to take off his shirt. When she went to give him a clean replacement, he proudly exclaimed that boys don't have to wear shirts, and that's pretty awesome. He didn't put on a new shirt, in case that was unclear. But yeah, joke's on you, kiddo. Just wait until your mum starts injecting you with estrogen and you grow boobs. And then you can never go topless again. Irony is indeed a cruel mistress. In referencing Jude, who is James's twin, Sarah wrote that the boys do not like going home to their mother's place. One evening, Jude said to his father, "Please, Daddy, don't make me go home. I don't want to go there." He was distraught. Yeah, I bet those child licenses are looking pretty appealing now, huh? I mean, I'm no parent or any child-rearing humanoid or whatever, because I'm not here to tell anyone how to parent their children. But hey there, James's mom. You're doing it wrong. Which brings us to the topic that I really want to discuss in this video. James Younger's case reminds me a lot of another story that happened in the 1960s called the John Jones study. And personally, I think it deserves way more airtime as a cautionary tale about the ramifications of forcing gender identity concepts onto children. So listen up. because almost all of you are going to hate this. In 1965, two twin boys called Bruce and Brian Reimer were born in Winnipeg, Canada. In order to alleviate a medical problem, at 8 months old, both of the boys were circumcised. The doctor performing the procedure used an electrocautery needle, which looks like this, instead of a scalpel, and accidentally burned off the majority of baby Bruce's penis. And every man watching this cringed just now. Not really knowing what to do or how to handle this, Bruce's parents decided to consult a leading expert in gender identity, psychologist John Money, who basically told them that the best course of action for this situation would be to medically transition their child Bruce from a boy to a girl. They then proceeded to do this using surgical, hormonal, and psychological therapies, and basically chemically castrated their son. Actually, that's a lie. They didn't just chemically castrate him, they fully removed his testicles. Like, good job, mom and dad. And then they kept the whole thing a total secret from everyone, including their children. I mean, I definitely don't want to make a joke out of this because I think it's super messed up, but this is like the equivalent of having a small cut on your arm and deciding to amputate it. So, are we all following so far? Men, are you done protectively clutching your man pickles? Wonderful. So to recap, twin boys, penis burned off, now raising boy as a girl to make up for mistake. That is not a sentence I ever thought I would be saying. Bruce was renamed Brenda and raised as a girl, and his brother Brian continued to be raised as a boy. The children would also visit John Money, who basically would monitor their progress. He'd ask them questions and observe them and make them pretend to do sexual acts. Yeah, he sounds like a real stand-up guy, exactly the kind of person you want around your children. John Money was essentially experimenting on the twins in order to test his theory that gender identity is all about upbringing rather than inborn innate traits. So in short, if you raise a boy as a girl, then that child will identify as a girl. Yeah, so to be clear, we're no longer just one 3-year-old child sitting in paint. We're actually more like a legion of children sitting in paint. That's a lot of paint. For a really long time, John Money and this study were looked at as a massive success, and hundreds of sex change operations were performed as a result. To this day, his work is still used and referenced, particularly in the United States, and throughout much of the developed world. You see where I'm going with this? I mean, like, seeing as this video is going to be demonetized anyway, let's now turn to some copyrighted content that will explain more about this in a nice British accent.
Dr. Money had developed a radical new theory about nature versus nurture, and how these twin forces affect whether we think of ourselves as a girl or a boy. He thought that while genes are important, as far as its gender is concerned, a baby is essentially neutral for the first 2 years of life. During these critical 2 years, the child's upbringing, how it is nurtured, will determine whether it feels masculine or feminine.
This is also probably the time to tell you that John Money is a New Zealander, which tells you everything you need to know. The problem with this entire thing, besides, like, everything, was that Brenda was absolutely miserable as a girl. At age 2, Brenda angrily tore off her dresses. She refused to play with dolls and would beat up her brother and seize his toy cars and guns. In school, she was relentlessly teased for her masculine gait, tastes, and behaviors. She complained to her parents and teachers that she felt like a boy. At 14 years old, the truth was finally revealed, and Brenda, who renamed himself David, finally felt like things made sense. David immediately transitioned back to his original sex, which meant undergoing a bunch of surgeries to remove the breast that he'd grown from taking estrogen and building him a new penis. Also not a sentence I ever thought I'd be saying. David eventually got married, had a normal job, and was living what seemed to be a pretty normal life. And then he decided to go public with his story to serve as a cautionary tale.
I tried to fit in. I tried with the makeup, and it turned out to be a disaster. I mean, you got the red circles on the cheeks, and I look like a clown, basically. And but I didn't do it because I liked it. I did it because I wanted so desperately to fit in because I was so lonely. And I let one boy kiss me on my cheek once, and I thought about it. I said, no, I don't like this. I can't help that. I am what I am.
So, in the end, both David and his brother Brian committed suicide in 2002 and 2004 after what seemed to be a lifetime of just trauma and mental illness that was brought on by this experiment. I think what happened to David and Brian should absolutely remind us that sometimes medical professionals, the courts, and parents, when they're acting within their own self-interests, often destroy the lives of children. And I personally think what's happening to James Younger as we speak completely exemplifies this. And there is just no way that you can tell me that these kind of things don't have mass adverse ramifications further down the line. Because, fun fact, they do. No, really, no offspring for you. When it comes to children, gender, and sexuality, we need to exercise caution. But the fact remains that at the moment, we are doing the exact opposite. We've basically taken the idea that gender is fluid and malleable and has nothing to do with biological sex, and we've started teaching this in schools to small children and making it an ingrained part of their upbringing. Which explains why referrals to gender clinics and therapy and kids saying that they're now transgender has skyrocketed over the last number of years. And the more these children say that they're transgender, the more that we're told to validate that, put them on hormones or puberty blockers, and basically treat them as their preferred sex. But this needs to be said. If you tell a child something, they're gonna believe you because they have little spongy pea brains. Come on. They believe that there is a magical man with a magical flying sled who flies through the sky with magical flying horses with sticks sticking out of their heads, who brings them toys by breaking into their house every single year for literally no reason. And you think that telling them that they can change gender is where they draw the line in the sand on their ability to believe adults? Seriously? But Papa, I believe you that there is a giant bunny rabbit that breaks into our house and brings me chocolate once a year. But me being able to be a girl? Papa, that is absurd. I'm pretty sure that my parents told me that I could be an elephant, which is why I used to sticky tape toilet paper rolls to my face and then crawl around on the floor. Not a joke. Logic and reason, people. Logic and reason. Part of the problem with all of this is that medical professionals have such differing opinions on such a life-altering and serious topic. For example, there are numbers that say that gender dysphoria in childhood does not continue into adulthood, and only 6 to 23% of boys and 12 to 27% of girls treated in gender clinics showed persistence in their gender dysphoria into adulthood. Another set of data says that only 12% of children with dysphoria still had it as adults, but in this study, the sample size was only 25 people. When it comes to doctors, one side is over here arguing that childhood and adolescence is when kids question everything, and therefore the exploration of gender should not involve life-altering and physiologically altering decisions before adulthood.
I think we have to acknowledge there are a lot of children who are confused about their gender identity as a normal phase that they would go through. It's not uncommon to be confused. The good news is they're going to grow out of it. Don't mess them up.
Sydney paediatrician Professor John Whitehall says the numbers of children being treated with gender dysphoria in Australia are currently skyrocketing. It's a condition where a person is born one gender, but in their mind, they're another. You don't accept that the true levels of gender dysphoria are as high as appear to be being diagnosed at the moment?
No, I don't. I've never seen it, and I think it's much rarer than the current reports would suggest.
The other side, on the other hand, argues for tolerance rather than questioning, meaning that we should basically support children transitioning no matter the cost. Which is why the case of David Reimer is so important. John Money tried to prove to us that gender identity is not inborn. But really, if anything, he proved the exact opposite. The Reimer case quickly was written into textbooks on pediatrics, psychiatry, and sexuality as evidence that anatomy was not destiny. The sexual identity was far more malleable than anyone had thought possible. Money's claims provided powerful support for those seeking medical or social remedies for gender-based ills. What went unreported until decades later, however, was that Money's experiment actually proved the opposite. The immutability of one's inborn sense of gender. And yet this study and its absolutely horrible consequences are so rarely mentioned. David Reimer rejected being a female despite the fact that he was brought up for the majority of his childhood as a female and conditioned as one. And we really need to question what that means in terms of the current social climate, and what that means for children like James Younger. We have a case study that tells us what happens when we force or convince children that their gender is as easy to change as their socks. And if this particular story is anything to go by, it doesn't end well when children are forced or coerced into transitioning. I don't profess to have all the answers here by any stretch of the imagination, and I do know that there will be a portion of children who have gender dysphoria who grow up, transition, and end up being very happy in their new sex. But for the most part, I still believe that we are going down a very, very dangerous path that will eventually have disastrous consequences. And the worst part about all of this, at least from my perspective, is that it concerns innocent children. Because if you followed me for any length of time, you will know that for the most part, when it comes to this issue, I really don't care too much what adults do behind closed doors with their money, with their body, provided that it doesn't affect me and I don't have to pay for it. Kids, on the other hand, are a little different. You don't mess with kids. No matter what anyone tells me, I do not believe that a 7-year-old has the ability to understand something like gender identity and sex, let alone decide to transition. If your kid wants to play with Barbies, cool, let them play with Barbies. But that doesn't mean that you can push them towards being a girl because they show interest in girly things. In the end, I think more people need to be made aware of the existing cases in this area that demonstrate just how damaging all of this can be on children. So for the first time ever on this channel, on that note, I'm gonna say, share this video. Save a small child. On that note, I open the floor to you. What do you all make of this? Should kids transition? What's your general opinion on this particular topic? And how do you feel about the cases of James Younger and David Reimer? As always, if you like the video, hit subscribe and the thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so. Just be respectful about it. And I will see you guys next time.